Hey guys, what is going on? Redmaster here, and welcome back to another tier list video. Of course, we have already been over the other factions, the other six, I believe. We've hit Vikings, Crusaders, Warlocks, Pirates, Ninjas, and Druids. So it makes sense to finish off this tier list series with the neutral faction. As always, the full tier list will be down in the description below if you guys would like to read up upon it, because I'm not going to mention, of course, every card that I have on the list. So with that being said, guys, let's just hop right into it. So the first card I want to talk about is the Brewery. Now, originally I didn't really think much of Brewery, but in my latest Ranked with Red, if you guys remember, I had that, or not Ranked with Red, actually it was a hidden combos, it was I think the Demon Kraken video, and it actually came down to a very close match thanks to the inclusion of my opponent, that he included Brewery. So that kind of got me thinking more about this card. I know with Brewery, you kind of just toss it over to the side because we have cards like Armory, which take care of that 1/1 buff. So it's more like putting Blacksmith and Armory together. Brewery is still an interesting card to use. With a game more focused, like I keep saying, around stat lines and how stats are so important, having that +1 upon your opponent is a very, very dangerous thing to have, especially in early stages of the game, like with Brewery, where with that, it's a 2 gold. So if you think about maybe like a 1/2 or a 2/2 Salahar Rider, I know it's not really a huge difference, but with what people run in the early game, is certainly going to throw them off a little bit. And if you get into later stages of the game, if you keep those breweries, having that extra health on your opponent will be, it'll help you trade a lot better going forward in the game. So I don't think it's again a super high valuable card like Armory, which is an A, but it's definitely not a C ranking or an F tier ranking because it does have some use. It can bring a lot of close. It can kind of actually no, it can actually widen the stat gap in matches between yourself and the opponent, which is beneficial for you thanks to the fact that you can make, again, a lot better trades, or a lot better, you can have more things hit more, that sounds so stupid, but it makes sense. You can have more things hit other things successfully without losing a lot of HP or dying. So it is something to just consider. Again, Brewery I don't really find to be, it's not going to be a superstar overnight, but it's something that maybe we should all watch out for. You never know what can happen, not only in the current competition, but an update may come, and you never know what's going to happen to Brewery. So with that being said, I think Brewery is just an interesting card that I figured was good to talk about. Next card I want to talk about is the Blacksmith. Now, the Blacksmith, I kind of have similar reasons for including him in this discussion, like I did with Brewery, but I find that Blacksmith might be a bit more of a surprise than Brewery. I did mark him off as an A tier card, and this kind of goes back to his reasons for being an A tier kind of go back to what I said about Brewery. Again, it's all about stat importance now in this game. So the wider you make those stat gaps between you and your opponent, the better luck you are going to have going forward with the rest of the match. So with Blacksmith, I think he's kind of in a more interesting position than Brewery. For one, he is not a building, of course. That means he can freely move around the board, provide an extra body if you so need it. But his ability to give an additional 1 attack to everything on your units is very big. Instantly, units become much more scarier due to the fact that they are dealing out more damage, and at an earlier cost too. Normally, if an opponent might want to use this sort of global buff, they're going to turn to Armory. But instead, if you use a Blacksmith, it's also going to be scarier. Just because it's earlier, and now your opponent may not have the correct means to deal with your card, or your Blacksmith really. I mean, they can burn it, but that means Armory is safer to play, so it becomes one big mess for them. The only reason I think it's not an S tier, its stats really can't help you all too much in battle. I mean, that is to be expected, though, with the fact that it is a 3 gold unit and a basic one at that. It's not going to be doing a whole lot. It can trade with a few cards, though, especially in the earlier stages. So say if I have like a Hassan City Guard rushing me, or a Salahar Rider, Blacksmith can successfully kill them off without really, ending his own life. So I feel like that's just something that, I mean, the stats are good, but I think like he just held back for those stat lines. If he was a, like, if he was a 2/4 maybe, that would mean I would put him more in maybe consider him for a higher tier, but for right now he's just in an A tier because of how much influence he can have at these critical points in the match. Again, 3 gold is what I consider a critical point. So if I create this, mass amount of, low cost but high attack units, it's going to be a mess for my opponent to deal with, especially because they don't want to trade their bigger units just to get rid of smaller guys and, make room for my big guys. So just a little word on Blacksmith there. I think he definitely deserves his A tier ranking. And with that being said, let's move on to our next card. The next card I want to talk about is Flux. I guess next. Now, Flux is definitely a strong unit. Her ability to gain 2 spells into your hand, and of course these are any minor spells that you wouldn't throw into your deck purposely, but can provide good abilities like Minor Upgrade, Dragon's Horde, just to name some Incinerate, just to name again some examples. And her stat line is pretty good too. 2/4. I mean, she's not really burned by that much, maybe except for a blue firebolt. So she will at least trade with one, or hit 1 unit on the board, meaning you will at least get 2 spells when you play her. So that's nice. Now, obviously, she is used in a lot of decks. And this is leading up to her A tier ranking. But it might surprise some of you that she has this A tier ranking and not an S tier ranking. The reason why I feel like she doesn't, have that S tier is because she has a major flaw to her. If you leave Flux alive for too long, she'll start to clutter your hand with spells, and with some of these spells, they're not always usable directly right away or, at all in your deck. So they're kind of just sitting there in your hand and, clumping up really quickly, I mean. That's fastly is not really a word. So the amount of cards you can build into your hand from Flux is useful, but at the same time, you could be taking a big risk with Flux, meaning your entire hand might be filled with minor spells that aren't really going to be doing too much, maybe due to the fact that, you just can't use them. Some of these minor spells you really can't use. I mean, people try and, they get rid of their hand, but they are costing them gold as well, especially with, if I want to use, say if I have 7 gold, but not enough room to draw anything new, I'm going to have to be using my spells just to open up some drawing space. And by that time, what did the minor spells accomplish? Not really that much. They could have maybe pushed an opponent back. They could have buffed my unit by 1/1. They could have burned something for 1. They have their uses, but I don't think Flux deserves an S tier because she does, she can majorly backfire on you. And that's kind of what the A tier rankings are. Good cards, but with some pretty significant flaws. So, with that being said, I think that kind of wraps up Flux as to why she is an A tier unit. I mean, again, definitely a great unit. The stat line is there. The cost is reasonable. The ability, again, is an amazing one. But her, again, flaw can majorly backfire and possibly destroy some decks. So that being said on Flux, I think that about wraps it up for her. So let's move into our next card. Now, our next card is going to be the Pegacorn. Now, I do feel like the Pegacorn is another one of those underrated cards. I do like to touch upon these throughout my discussions because I feel like it is important to bring some of their importance to light, that people don't see because they are using constant meta decks just to get a better ranking, which I understand. If you want to play the game, you want to kind of get to a higher place, so it makes sense for you to use meta decks. So that's that's kind of how games survive and metas are. I think I'm getting off topic here. Anyway, Pegacorn, again an underused card. He's kind of got a lot going for him. And what makes him special is that Rainbow Shield. Now, the Rainbow Shield doesn't really, there are cards that share similar abilities to Pegacorn in terms of not being damaged by spells, but Deflect and Rainbow Shield are 2 different things. Deflect is just simply the fact that you cannot be targeted by a spell, so cards like Kraxus, I think, and Dremoth are prime examples of that, and of course Deflecting Shield can be put on any unit, giving them that deflectability, but they can be still hurt by AoE damage spells. Cards like Flamestorm, cards like, I'm trying to think what else is AoE damage. Or really stun damage or freeze, anything like that. Or not, well, stun is not damage, but you guys get what I mean here. They can be still affected by cards that sort of do a mass targeting rather than a single target. With Pegacorn, however, he's different. He can be still affected by freeze and stun, yes, but with burn as the sort of primary form of damage spell being run, or sort of any sort of opposing harming spells, I guess we can classify them as. Pegacorn can deflect that damage no problem. And with his stats at 5/5, he will give your opponent a run for his money due to the fact that he can't really immediately trade with a weaker unit. He's going to have to maybe sacrifice 2 units at least to get rid of Pegacorn, which is going to be a good thing unless you are facing some sort of, it's not spawn deck. I'm blanking on the word right now. I'm blanking on it. I'll probably figure it out in a moment, but you guys know what I mean, like the zombie decks and whatnot. If you're facing one of those, Pegacorn may not be the best option because those tokens are a lot more easily tradable. But any other deck will find Pegacorn a problem. I know from experience, I've kind of been able to successfully weave out of a few games myself because Pegacorn isn't affected by Warlock damage. So that really does help in the overall scheme of things. So I think he is a good card too. I mean, doesn't really have a lot of downsides to playing him. The only thing I can really think of that's stopping him from S tier is the cost. He is a bit of an expensive boy to play, but I don't really think he's got any other issues other than that. So I think he deserves his A tier ranking. Definitely, again, an underused card. So if you are looking for an interesting choice to throw into your deck, I suggest Pegacorn as your next option. So that being said, that's all from Pegacorn, and that's all for Pegacorn, excuse me. Let's take a look at our final card for this discussion on this tier list. Now, our last card we're going to be looking at is the Swordsman. Now, the Swordsman is quite a unique card. It's been around for a very long time in the game, but he maintains an A tier ranking, at least for this iteration of the game, because of how unique he really is. So Swordsman, of course, is a 7 gold basic neutral card, so he can really, you really should have this card at whatever kind of tier or whatever kind of level of play you're at, whether you're just starting out or have been here for years. Everyone has a Swordsman, and what makes him special is that cleave ability. Now let me just show you when I type in cleave. He's the only card to come up out of any of these 7 factions, so that right there is a big standout. Now, of course, Cleave is a very deadly ability as well. It kind of hits everything in a 3x3 radius surrounding the swordsman. So when he attacks, he has a much bigger chance of hitting multiple targets in one strike. For 7 as a stat line too, the 7 is what kind of brings this card, or what makes this card stand out. It's sort of like an unusual place. I mean, it's not going to be hurt by, it will be hurt by a few things, but again, it's not in that area where, okay, I can just burn this guy and move on. No, you're going to actually have to put some extra effort in to get rid of Swordsman. And with his 4/7 attack stats, easily buffed, to a 5/8, 6/9 to become a much more deadlier unit. But again, I think the cleave is what makes him stand out here. It's an amazing ability, and everyone has access to him, so that just makes him an incredible card. And again, he fits in nearly anywhere as well. No matter what deck you're running, you don't even have to run knights to specifically make swordsman stronger. Sure, you can use knights to really bolster him, but he can really just fit in any sort of deck and just create a much scarier presence on the board when he's played, because players are going to have to move around him, or have to navigate their own units a bit more carefully if they don't want to be destroyed by a swordsman play. So again, I think swordsman's a great unit, one that definitely again deserves an A tier ranking. And that being said, I think that just about wraps up this neutral tier list. With that being said, guys, if you guys did enjoy this edition of the tier list, this was our final tier list for these 7 factions in Cards and Castles. My plan going forward is to actually do these kind of tier lists for when updates come out. So, like, if there are major changes to cards, I feel like I will make a tier list for them. I'll kind of go a side-by-side comparison. So, like, my tier list will have maybe, like, Merciless Santa, for example. I'll have him going from, like, oh, this card went from a B into an A. Or have, like, Andrew go into, like, a, B to a C. And I don't think I put Andrew as a B. But you guys kind of get my gist of what I'm going for. I'm going to hopefully do this for other updates. or new cards if they are coming out. I do know for a fact that we are getting an update soon. So that is in the works. Don't worry, it is coming. For those of you who might be unsure about that. But with that being said, guys, if you know, like I said, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like on it, share with your friends, and comment down below your thoughts on the neutral tier list. And while you're down there, be sure to check out the full tier list in the description below. But as well, subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you are new or haven't done so, it helps the channel grow, helps show your support, all by clicking that subscribe button at no additional cost to you. So with that being said, until next time, guys, that's all from me for now. Stay gaming.